But I mean, if you get too cold now.
Ready? City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Tandem.
Here.
Alderman Grover.
Here.
Alderman Rainey.
Here.
Alderman Burris. Alderman Fisk.
Here.
Alderman John Batiste.
Here.
Alderman Nguyen.
Here.
Alderman Wills. Alderman Holmes.
Here.
8 to 9. I mean 8 to 1.
We have a quorum. Alderman Wilson is away because of a death in the family. I, Elizabeth B. Tisdall, Mayor of the City of Evanston, pursuant to Council Rule 16.3, call for a special meeting of the Evanston City Council on Monday, November 15th, 2010 at 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers at the Evanston Civic Center, 2100 Ridge, for the purpose set forth below: roll call, public comment, fiscal year 2011 budget discussion and consideration and adjournment. Welcome to the meeting. We will start with public comment. As soon as I get the list, I'll call your names. And each person can have 3 minutes if that's really all you take. Otherwise, it's going to have to go down to 2.5. Junad Risky, Kit Elliott, Kevin O'Connor, and Jean Lindwall are first.
Another speaker gave me some of their time, so I'm not going to take it all. But first, I just got this little gift tonight. I want to thank Kevin for it. It's a little piggy bank. It's quite nice. I'm collecting my tax increase in it. But that's really not the point. Does this council learn from its budgetary mistakes or just repeat them? At the last council meeting, a capital project was approved to replace the greenhouse at the Ecology Center. My question is, what was approved? Was a $30,000 expenditure approved from the taxpayers' money or with a $90,000 grant, or was a $120,000 expenditure approved? It was very unclear to me what was approved and what direction staff is taking. Why is this relevant to this budget hearing? Is because I'm curious, how was the 313 Center approved as an expenditure? Where does it show up in a past council agenda that the council approved it? Did this council approve a $500,000 budget cut from other funds when it approved this 311 Center and the cuts to the employees and $100,000 in capital? I personally see not much value in this 313 Center working from 7 in the morning to 11 at night. An Ecology Center employee is going to be eliminated because of this. Have known the director of the Ecology Center for some years and understood she sent a letter to the city, which I haven't seen. But as a community guarder, I go to the Ecology Center and I see how busy it is over there, how the rooms are booked and what's going on. I really don't understand how a customer service representative in 311 is going to handle customer service with a computer screen when you have somebody at the center handling this work. We can't continue to afford what I call any more problems here, like the early retirement program and wasting money on an interconnect project. I believe an alderman asked for this in the budget memos, and I didn't see it. Unfortunately, the days here of these Ponzi scheme days are over because, frankly, we don't have any funds left to deal with the problems. Council members need to learn from these past mistakes. Citizens may not like their tax increase and service cuts, but I seriously doubt citizens are going to continue to have any more patience for all the mistakes here. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Kit Elliott. I live at 732 Michigan. In one recent 4-day week, 177 people signed up to use computers at South Branch Library. Without that access, people looking for work would not be able to see what jobs might be available. Residents looking for a new place to live would not be able to see what is available. Children with homework assignments would not be able to access those assignments. Older students with research papers due would not be able to accomplish that work. Those trying to stay in touch with loved ones, even if they themselves have no fixed address, would not be able to use an email account. These are the elite that would be affected by closure of South Branch and losing internet access. The two branches combined cost less than 0.5% of the city revenue base. Closing them hurts only those who are desperately in need of services within their immediate community. Please do not kick those who are already down in a time when their economic need is most keenly felt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Kevin O'Connor, 1227 and a half Isabella. I'd like to thank Marty Lyons for putting a response to the contingency fund, which is proposed in this year's budget at $333,200. It looks like it was budgeted from 06 through 010 at 200,000, but the only year the money was taken was 07-08 for the early retirement incentive program, otherwise known commonly as the Golden Parachute, and that amount was $199,431. I'm curious if there could be a little more light and or transparency as to what our city manager is thinking as to why this year it needs to be $333,200. Also under the city manager's account, upon further study, there's miscellaneous business operations, expenditure account 1525. Actual last budget, 09 and 10, was $113,312. It's estimated at $405,000 for this year, proposed at $427,365. Under account number 1510, public information, that was $460,517, and it's proposed this year to be, it was estimated at $676,000. It's proposed at $427,365. And then on the revenue side, there's an account number 51555 that in 09-10 was $113,738 in actual dollars. 2011 it's proposed for $900,000, but there's no real clarification as to what those are. There's also in the city council budget, account number 62360, membership dues have been reduced from $56,000 in the last budget to $39,000. I'm wondering why we still have $39,000 in membership dues. However, I will applaud the council or whoever is looking to cut their food budget from $4,500 to $3,000. Finally, in that, to speak in more political language, I really feel, since we're almost at a year since this library issue started, that we're at a big tipping point. And I would ask this council, I know that you are listening, but I would ask the question, are you really hearing? Due to the courage and determination of one citizen, you have the largest grassroots democratic group in this town in my lifetime. And if the library issue is not resolved, I don't know where you will get that kind of outreach in the future. Most of these people, unlike me, are non-political. And I know the council sees things very much in political terms in that, but this is a huge tipping point, and it's really important that as you make your final votes, that the library issue is resolved to grow,
Mr. O'Connor,
reinvent.
your 3 minutes are done.
Thank you. Grow, reinvent, and expand the library. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Jean Lindwall, 625 Library Place. Conceptually, I think that the city's proposed 311 system is a good idea. However, given all of the services and that need to be cut in order to fund it, and without a property tax increase, I think that the time is not right to implement such a system. I would suggest that implementation be deferred until January 1st of 2012 so that the city manager and staff can find alternate ways of funding the system. The prospect of cutting forestry workers to trim the trees and keep them in good repair, not injecting the elms, which has been a very successful program, the prospect of losing neighborhood library services that I think that the library supporters have documented that really does meet a critical community need is really so that I can call up the city at 10 o'clock at night and get a quicker answer to a question than I might otherwise, just is the wrong place to be putting our resources. There's been discussion about changing, shifting capital improvement priorities and working toward reducing the city's overall bonded indebtedness, which I think is good and important to do. And I think as those strategies are decided by the council and implemented, there may be room to otherwise fund a 311 system. I've spent a little time looking at the 311 systems that were cited as examples, and quite frankly, I think that the city's website and the kinds of service inquiries that you can access just on the web now are far superior to either of those community systems. In terms of a reverse 911 system, I know of I've had a number of client communities that have that system and don't have a 311 system. Similarly, I know a lot of communities that have a frequently asked question on their website, which do not necessarily have the reverse 911 or a 311 system. So I think that really my point is I think that the incremental improvement in response times for citizen inquiries is simply not worth the service cuts that would be needed to implement this. I don't know, given that we're in a transitional budget year, so we're really only talking 10 months, I think that I would urge the council to not cut critical services and defer implementation of 311 until next year when you have a much better handle on what the costs and benefits would be for that system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Virginia Mann, Mimi Peterson, Bob Anderson, and Leigh Skinner.
Good evening. Last week, I presented you on behalf of, Virginia Mann, 3004 Normandy Place, Evanston, Illinois. I guess I don't do this often enough. Last week, I presented you with a memo with some numbers that were truly astounding, and I understand that we do have a response to that memo with some different numbers. The numbers are still astounding. Whether you spend $2,000 to cut down a tree, remove the stump, and plant another tree, or $3,000 to do so, when you are cutting down hundreds of mature trees every year, you are wasting a tremendous amount of taxpayer dollars, particularly when there is an alternate program that is 99.38% effective in saving that tree. It is shameful that at some point in the past 6 years, while this program has been going on, that somebody in the city hasn't said, wait a minute, we're at 99.38% effectiveness rate. Whatever the cost is, we can save a tremendous amount of money by injecting all the trees rather than cutting them down. That should have been brought to our attention. It hasn't been. It is now. I hope that as a result, you will not only not cut the injection program, but that you will expand it to cover all elm trees in the city and save us taxpayer dollars. The numbers truly are astounding. And if you look at the fact that since my colleague Lee Skinner brought up, that since we started talking about this 6 years ago, we have lost 700 elm trees at a cost. If you look at the $3,000 per tree number that the city originally estimated at that time, cost us $2.1 million. If you use the $2,000 figure that they're using today, it cost us $1.4 million. And that's just the fiscal cost. The environmental cost, the cost to the ambiance of our community, the cost to homeowners' property values and the ambience of their community is immeasurable. We need to take a serious look at how we are operating our budgets, and I fear, as I see changing numbers every time we come here to talk about this, that nobody really knows what's going on with the budget. What we need to do is take a serious look at this. We know that the injection program is 99.38% effective. Let's expand it to every elm tree in the city and quit wasting time and money scouting and doing cutouts and cutting down mature, viable trees that greatly enhance the Evanston community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Lee Skinner, 1123 Noyes Street. I've been here many times to talk about how much I love trees and how important it is for you guys to protect them. A lot of our trees were planted more than 120 years ago, so we're just the current day caretakers of these trees, and it's our responsibility to leave them for our future generations. I've talked a lot about how important it is to keep the vaccination program for the elm trees. In this budget proposal, you're talking about cutting the significant elm program, which is 679 elm trees between the diameters of 10 and 30. And I got to tell you, all the elm trees on McCormick Boulevard are about 23-inch diameter. These are huge trees you're talking about not vaccinating. And I was reading the memos more closely, and I was amazed to read that if you eliminate the significant program, the signature elms, which are the biggest ones in our city, they're 30-inch diameter and above. Now, these are huge, huge trees. The vaccinations for those trees will be delayed, which will put many of those huge trees at risk. And those trees, to me, are sacred, and I know a lot of people in this town feel that way. So think very carefully before you cut the smaller elm tree program. And if you're really trying to save money for your next budget 2 or 3 years from now, you really would vaccinate all of them. It makes fiscal sense. But why I really came today was to talk about that you're also proposing eliminating 2 parks and forestry worker positions at a grade 3 level, and that would have serious implications to our forestry department. All of the duties that they perform would take more time, and they are the people that do the vaccinations. So your cost of vaccinations would go up, and that should go in a budget if you're thinking about doing that. They trim the trees, and we just recently got to a better tree trimming schedule. We were on like a 30 or 25-year cycle for many years. Mimi Peterson, who's not here tonight, went to city council for like a year and a half and got you guys to get back on a 6-year tree trimming cycle. We were only able to do that for like a year, and then things come up and we fall behind schedule again. I think we're at a 12 or 15-year cycle now, which is terrible. Trimming trees helps keep them healthy, helps keep them alive. What do you think bugs and beetles go to? They go to the dead wood. That's how we get diseases in trees. Plus, when there's a storm, all those dead limbs land on cars, go through houses, cause a lot of damage. So if you're not going to trim the trees, we're going to spend the money later on cleanup. We're going to shift those costs to the police department, the fire department, the utility companies. We're not going to have power. I can't get to work. There's trees in the road. I mean, we actually, as a taxpayer, absorb all those costs. It's just a different category. So I would like healthy trees. I'd like to spend the money and actually get what I want, which is healthy trees, not spend lots of money on overtime and fixing power lines and insurance claims, and not actually having healthy trees in the end. The emerald ash borer is attacking a lot of our ash trees, and we are going to lose a lot of trees this year. And we have to do everything we can to keep the rest of our trees alive. We also need forestry workers to watch out for infestations of this beetle. It could kill billions of dollars of ash trees if it moves past us and goes up north to Wisconsin.
Thank you. Mimi Peterson is not here. She signed up. And Bob Anderson. Next would be Paula Twilling, Debbie Kaiser, Trish Steiglitz, Lori Keenan, who have all ceded their time to Marcia Mahoney.
Paula Twilling, 2664 Sheridan Road. I'm not here tonight to tell you that the proposed 3% property tax increase to fund the police and fire pensions is wrong. It is an obligation that must be met or solved in another form. However, there has been no tax increase for several years to keep up with the funding of both necessary and desired city government services and personnel. The proposed budget and the process by which we are here tonight is an example of how wrong this was. A budget, should reflect a community's values. In the case of library services that I am using as an example tonight, this budget does not reflect what residents have accomplished in order to convince the council that more branch libraries are needed, not less or none. I ask all of you in this room and beyond, when do you remember when a group of residents raised money for city government? In this instance, residents raised money, promoted outreach and awareness for the continuation and expansion of libraries. This is the kind of activity that needs to be recognized and promoted. Residents who did this don't love their entitlements. They love education. These people who promoted awareness didn't create conflict. They illustrated commitment. They are not building huggers for the love of bricks and mortar. They are not dinosaurs who despise technology. They embrace it. But they know that when kids can embrace a book, a real book of their own, these kids are on their way, and we have helped them and ourselves. To have a property tax increase to only cover police and fire pensions is insufficient. It does not address what services residents have demonstrated that they want. No one wants to pay more taxes, but people realize if they are not asked to do this, both necessary and desired services will be whittled away, and the reasons we all live in Evanston begin to fall away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marcia Mahoney. I live at 1236 Forest in the 3rd Ward. Until just 2 weeks ago, I was a branch assistant at the South Branch Library. I voluntarily left my job, so I will not be affected by a decision to close South Branch, and therefore I feel comfortable sharing 4 of my observations about neighborhood library services with you. First, neighborhood libraries build community. At South Branch, I watch people mingle: white, black, Hispanic, Asian, cashmere sweaters, leather jackets, sagging jeans, hijabs, purple-haired teens, and blue-haired seniors. The everyday interaction of these people builds acceptance between them, and that acceptance builds community. South Branch patrons include children and seniors who come by foot, disabled folks who can't make it downtown, and citizens who can't afford internet access at home. At South Branch, we currently serve between 40 and 50 people a day on our 4 desktop computers and 3 active laptops. If you would join me at South Branch, I could introduce you to the children of hardworking parents who are employed by Whole Foods, Doc Abel's, and the Auto Barn, who do their homework together until they are picked up at closing time. The 5th grader who had me teach him distance equals rate times time a few weeks ago. The 2nd grader who asks for help every Thursday when he has to write sentences using his spelling words. The grandmother and grandson who live together in the apartments along the south side of Main Street, who come in during the evening so she can check her email while he entertains himself in the children's section. Job seekers who come to fill out online applications, the residents of Albany Care who rely on South Branch for books and internet, and the 20-somethings who live in the apartments south of Main Street who are unemployed or underemployed and need a place to go. And with true irony, I could introduce you to our many disabled patrons who have made South Branch, which is not fully ADA compliant, an integral part of their weekly lives. The gentleman who drives his motorized wheelchair from Reba Place for movies, the woman who comes in her motorized chair looking for most wanted fiction, the blind patron and his dog who come from Main Street for audiobooks, the students from Park School who come for story time. All of the people I've just mentioned know one another as members of the South Branch community. Their everyday interaction builds acceptance, and that acceptance helps build our community. My second observation, neighborhood library access fosters library usage. People who wouldn't otherwise have time to access the main library use the branches. Their small physical size is a benefit. In just minutes, you can park, enter, grab a bestseller, a movie, and a picture book, and check out. Evanstonians are busy. That's why we go to grocery stores, dry cleaners, gas stations, and community centers in our neighborhoods. They efficiently provide services close to home. One example of the importance of convenient library services stands out. This summer, for the first time, EPL sent staff and volunteers to Robert Crown and Fleetwood Jourdain to catch campers and their parents at pickup time. I was one of those folks and was honored to be selected. We handed out free books and gave kids the prizes that were incentives in the library's summer reading game. I don't have words to express the magnitude of the positive response. Parent after parent after parent stopped to say thank you. With exhausted and relieved faces, they explained that their kids had been bugging them to go to the main library to sign up for the summer reading game and to get books, but they hadn't had time to get there. The current branch system does not provide neighborhood services to residents in West and Southwest Evanston. That is simply wrong. The summer programs I mentioned and the book walls that EPL and its friends have created at Boku and Robert Crown are a wonderful beginning and are greatly appreciated by the folks who are using them. But library services also means internet access, access to new releases, children's and adult programming, and the presence of a human being who can help patrons access those items thoughtfully and efficiently. Evanston needs those services either at Robert Crown and Fleetwood Jourdain or at another West Side location. Unless this council has the time to figure out how it can get that done, it should give the library board the opportunity to do so. My third observation, while I believe neighborhood library services to West Evanston are long overdue, I don't believe they should come at the expense of services in the main Chicago business district. Library services, particularly internet access, are needed and valued in Southeast Evanston. Other than South Branch, there is no community building south of Church Street and east of Robert Crown at which these Evanston residents can be served. My final observation, Evanston is a city of neighborhoods. Neighborhoods are part of our heritage and part of our charm. Not unlike Chicago, where the branch libraries are on average 1.5 miles apart and the branch system is thriving, Evanstonians live, work, shop, drink coffee, and mail packages in our neighborhoods. In some suburbs, residents drive from destination to destination, folding a library visit into their drive-around. Evanstonians are different. We walk, bike, take public transportation. Comprised of varied neighborhoods, Evanston is suburban, yet urban. Please, in your pursuit of efficiency, don't sacrifice the essence of Evanston life, which is neighborhood life. A year ago, the city manager met with library staff at our annual staff day. He told staff that there were always places to find money in a city budget for something that was important to citizens, and that if we motivated citizens to plead for library services, the council would respond. As a citizen, I am here to plead for library funding. The city has creatively found a way to fund a 311 call center. Please use that same creativity to fund library services throughout Evanston, or work with the library board to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes citizen comment. City manager, did you want to start with a capital improvement plan?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, good evening. We would like to do that. Joellen Daly is here. Joellen Earl is here to make that presentation. But first, at your last council meeting, we gave an update. Actually, Alderman Burris gave an update on some crosswalk work that was expected to begin the end of last week, which did not begin, and we want to make sure that everyone in the community has the latest information on this. So, Suzette, if you wouldn't mind giving a brief update as to where we stand and when we expect that work to begin.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, City Manager. I'm Suzette Robinson, the Director of Public Works. And the crosswalk painting project, we're going to paint about 24 crosswalks and speed humps at various locations. The project was scheduled to start on Thursday, and it's been delayed, and it's supposed to start tomorrow. The contractor had some work left to do on an IDOT contract that involved liquidated damages. So once they concluded that, they're coming to Evanston to paint those crosswalks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, then what we would propose to do this evening is give a brief overview of the capital improvement budget. We're going to be asking that the council consider the entire budget this evening, and we're going to bring back to you on the 22nd for action only those projects that are being funded outside of the general obligation bonds that are normally issued. We believe that there are additional policy questions that need to be discussed with that. We have a little bit of time before any final decisions would have to be made. So we'll be asking next week that as you consider the capital improvement budget, that you only consider those projects funded outside of the city, and that we would come back to you and begin a discussion at your December 13th meeting about the general obligation projects, because I believe several of them require additional policy discussion of the council, and think it would be a better use of your time to do that once the general operating budget is decided on. So with that, Mrs. Earl, good evening.
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Mayor Tisdale, members of the City Council, Clerk Green. As the City Manager said, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the capital improvements plan this evening. The information that you received to date includes the 5-year plan. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but it was presented in 3 parts. There were 3 large spreadsheets that you received. The first one is the current year projects along with their status and the recommended carryover amounts. That was the white spreadsheet. The second one was the pink spreadsheet, and it was the non-GO projects with the corresponding funding sources and future obligations. And then the last one, which was blue, is the GO proposed projects and the future obligations. As the City Manager said, I am not going to get into the GO projects. We would like to come back and have future discussion, especially about a lot of the facility projects. In addition to that, we do want to update that spreadsheet. It came to our attention after we gave it to you that we did omit some of the general obligation projects proposed in the out years. So it won't affect the discussion for next year. However, we do want to make sure you have the most accurate information so you are aware of all of the projects that the city may face at some point in the future. The first funding source of the capital improvement program, which we spend a lot of time talking about, is general obligation debt. And as I indicated, we're asking to hold on all of those projects until a later date, starting on December 13th. But tonight, we're going to talk to you about all of the other funding sources that are listed there, with the exception of CIP reserves. But what we are going to bring to you, and I wanted to indicate as well that all of the directors are here to talk about any specific projects that I'm going to highlight from the other funding sources. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the current year and the carryovers. In addition to the project funding that we'll be seeking for next year for all of the sources other than the GO debt. So the top part of the slide you see there are all of the carryovers by funding source. You may recall that the current year's CIP is approximately $33 million. If you look at the white sheet, the large spreadsheet, that's the current year. It has the status, and you can see all of the projects that will need to be reauthorized for next year, and the total is about $9.6 million. And the next few slides, I'm going to go through the projects, but the total that we're requesting that you reauthorize for next year is $9.6 million. In addition to that, I'll go through all of the specific projects for next year that are funded through other sources. And you can see, again, on this slide, the total is $16.2 million. The first funding source is the Economic Development Fund, and it goes all the way through the Water Fund. So if we start with the CIP reserve and the GO debt carryover, you can see the projects listed there that either are started or have not started, but were funded in the current year. The first area is the CIP reserve. The project starts with the bridge rehab and ends with the CTA yellow line. The next area is GO debt, starting with the animal shelter renovation down to the new salt dome. We have two areas on this slide, the grants carryover and then the community development block grant carryover. And again, these are projects that were approved for the current fiscal year, but they either have started, are in process, or have not started, and we're requesting that they be carried to next year. On the private donation, TIF, and the water fund, there's a few projects listed here as well that we're requesting that the funds be carried over. Those are all of the carryover projects. Again, they come to a little over, well, about $9.5 million. All of the detail was also supplied to you, again, on Friday in your packet, so you can refer to the specific project descriptions on any of this year's projects. And again, all of the directors are here if you have any specific questions about the current year and the project status.
Alderman Burris.
Another one of my favorite topics, Grandmother Park. Throughout this document, there's three different pieces of funding for the Grandma Park, and it makes it look in this document that the fundraising piece has been completed at $125,000. Could someone address that, as well as addressing the other pieces that it looks like we're paying out? I know that the council approved the $50,000 for the acquisition of the property, but I think the way that this budget is laid out, it's a bit confusing. Are we now, there's I think another $30,000 and then the $125 from private sources, so I'd like to know where we are.
Doug Gaynor, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. We are waiting for the grant notification, number one. That hasn't come through. We have, to my knowledge, not received or aware of that other larger number of 125, I think you mentioned, in donations. I know they're working on that. I know that was proposed. So what we are aware of as far as funding is concerned is what was approved by the council through, I think, the Economic Development Fund.
Can we get a status update then from the entity?
Yeah, we certainly will make contact.
And when is the date for the grant notification? Do you have any idea?
Any day now.
Okay, I just didn't know if it was now or if it was 3 months from now.
It could be up to 3 months from now. We're not sure. Their schedule varies. Sometimes we've waited as late as, sometimes I think in June for notification.
Okay. Oh, we have one more question. Was the property already purchased?
Yes, I believe the property was purchased.
Great, thank you.
We have moved into the requested projects for next year. And as I indicated at the beginning, the only projects that we're going to be bringing forward to you, which total a little over $16 million, are projects funded through sources other than GO debt. So the first two that are listed there are proposed to be funded through the Economic Development Fund, which is the 1817 Church Street Public Arts Center study, as well as a portion for Grandmother Park.
Alderman Burris?
Also, another one of my favorite projects, 1817 Church. Could we get a full disclosure list of how much money over the course of the last, I think this has been going on 8-10 years, something like that? Is that right, Alderman Rainey?
Longer.
However long this has been going on, the amount of money that the city has put out, mostly it's through CDBG. I'm not sure what other funds, obviously Economic Development Fund here, which I'm not exactly sure how economic development money is being used for a CDBG project that this building most likely will not be used for economic development. That's a side issue, but I'd like to know the amount of money. I know we gave out $200,000 or more. This building is still dilapidated. So just be transparent to the public of how much money we've wasted on this and continue to waste.
I think that concludes the questions.
The Fleet Fund capital replacements that are listed there, one thing I wanted to highlight for you is the fact that we are recommending we start the practice of the funds that are not expended in the current year's fleet be held in the Fleet Fund. So a portion of the 1.9 is some of the money from this year for purchases that will not occur.
Alderman Burris?
Regarding the Fleet Fund, are we starting to look at buying hybrids or low-emission vehicles? I know it's something that we've talked about but really haven't done.
We have one.
Okay, we have one. There you go. Since we're supposed to be a green city and have a Citizens for Greener Evanston and Environment Board, I'm not sure that we've done a stellar job of buying fleet vehicles that are helpful.
And I can answer that, Alderman Burris, members of the council. There is a policy that the city has on the purchase of vehicles. That policy is used each time a vehicle is purchased, and when we are able to use a green vehicle, we do. And I think over the last, Ms. Robinson, over the last several months, maybe 6-9 months, we've made a point every time there is a vehicle purchase of indicating that review has been done and the reasons why vehicles have or have not been purchased that are green. Is that correct?
That is correct. And we are also exploring the possibility of purchasing a hybrid garbage truck. We have a grant that we received to purchase a garbage truck, and there's a couple of cities that their pilots are coming to the end of life and they're good results. So we should be coming back to you shortly.
Great, thank you.
Alderman Jean-Baptiste?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the projects that have been approved that have not yet been started, are we proposing that, how do we view that money? Do we view it as a saving in terms of carrying over to the next year's budget, or are we adding on a new set of proposed projects?
No.
And do we realistically think that these projects will be completed if we're adding some new ones?
As far as the carryovers are concerned, those were the priority one projects that you approved in the current year's budget. For various reasons, one of which is because the CIP was not adopted until late spring, almost into the summer this year. We were a little behind the time frame to get some of the projects started. So some of them are in process, or some have not started, and therefore, because you already approved them this year, we're requesting authorization to just have the projects reauthorized for next year. My expectation would be that everything would be completed next year, but if you have a question about a specific project, I'm sure that one of the directors could answer it.
Well,
But there are no new projects. These are all, the carryovers are the existing projects that were previously approved.
And if I
Go ahead.
If I may, Alderman John Baptiste, one of the reasons we're not bringing the new GEO projects to you is we want to make a good assessment that anything that we would be asking the council to issue additional debt on, we could actually do in the current year. We don't feel it's prudent to issue debt for projects that we're not going to complete during the course of the year. As Mrs. Earl indicated, we did get a slow start this year because we wanted to make sure that the council directed us to have a more thoughtful discussion on the capital projects this year. So we have done that, but we also want to make sure that we have a capital program. If we think we are going to do a project in a year and we're asking you to move forward, we would like to try to get it done in that year's time, or be transparent if we think it's going to be a multiple-year project, which sometimes projects certainly are.
Okay. I'm for continuing the funding for projects that have been started, and I think that the council generally would agree with that, but projects that have not yet been started, I would not want us to just give a blanket approval. I would want to hear about these projects again to understand whether or not they continue to be priority projects. So as opposed to, I don't know whether you were just asking it in general, you intended to come back and give us some particulars as to what have not yet been started, or whether you're asking for a general
and Alderman John Baptiste
authorization to just go forward.
It would be our recommendation that we would move forward with those things that have already been approved. If the council would rather go through those projects that have not started, we can do that when we come back to you on the 13th as part of the larger discussion on the GEO funded projects.
That would be my request. Okay. Because, if we approved it a year ago and it didn't get started for whatever reason, I think we should have a chance to take a look at these projects.
And Madam Mayor, I'm not seeing any objections, so what we'll plan to do then is, as part of the December 13th discussion, we will review first all projects that have not been started.
And to
Alderman Rainey.
Just to clarify, not started but approved in terms of what we figure should be allocated, or not started and no discussion of approval of an amount to cover the cost?
My understanding is, from what Alderman John Baptiste is requesting, is that if there was an approval for the fiscal year 10-11 budget and that project has not started, he would like to revisit the project.
Because one of the things that I noticed on the capital plan is tens of thousands of dollars for branch library renovations. In fact, a couple $100,000. So I would think that we need to look at that again. I don't think that that work has been started.
It has not been started.
I just wanted to understand.
I see no more lights, Joe Helen.
And right now, I'm talking about the projects for the FY11 budget, which will commence in March and end in December. I'm referring to the large pink spreadsheet that you have. And in addition to that, on Friday, we did send to you all of the project descriptions that had this, I guess it's a goldenrod color. So, and it is cross-referenced with the spreadsheets at the beginning. So if you did have a particular project that you needed some more information on, you have it. Okay. As far as the grants, Community Development Block Grant, the Illinois Department of Natural Resource grant-funded projects, here is the list. The first part are grants, and most of them are public works projects. The Bridge Rehab Program, emergency repair, that's a road project on Emerson and Isabella, Chicago Avenue Streetscape, CTA Yellow Line Infill Station Study, Sheridan Road, and the SCADA system improvements, and of course I have to say what that stands for, and I'm going to forget. I wrote it.
Diagnostic system that our water and sewer divisions use.
Well, I asked Dave here, supervisory control and data acquisition, just in case anybody asked me. The next area are community development block grants, Fleetwood Jourdain Center Arts and Crafts Room renovations, Twiggs Park renovations, block curb and sidewalk replacement, ADA ramps, alley paving, and SNAP lighting. Most of those, again, are public works projects, and then the last one is a portion of the Grandmother Park project. We have street resurfacing from the motor fuel tax. We also have numerous projects in the parking fund, with the garage repair being the largest project. And just so you know what's included there, it is the membrane on the surface, the concrete repairs, and some of the columns. And I'm sure that the parking committee, according to Ricky, I did talk to him about these projects, and he told me that they've already been through the committee. In addition to that, there's another piece of the Grandmother Park in the private donations, as well as the animal shelter renovation.
Alderman Burris.
Is it my understanding the animal shelter renovation, that $450,000 is cash in hand? Can anybody answer that question for me?
I don't believe we've received it yet, but Doug, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't think we had received it yet. Is that correct? Apparently not.
As part of the agreement was they needed to have a certain portion of the funding of the $450,000 in an escrow account, which they have deposited. So we do have a letter indicating that there's a certain amount, as prescribed by the agreement, in an escrow account. It is not the full $450,000.
Could you give me a percentage?
Probably half.
Yeah, okay. And then you may be able to answer these next questions. The other private donations, are those cash in hand for the following ones?
For Grandmother Park?
No, for Curry Park. Yeah, I know, but right, but they're going further out, and it says private donation. So my question is, where's? I don't think it's up. It's not up there for you. Do you have it? It's in a subsequent year. It's in. Yes, it's going further out, but I'm not sure why we're putting private donation of $200,000 for fiscal year 13, and then $50,000 for fiscal year 12 for library interior renovations. And I'm just wondering, is that somebody has said they're going to give money then, or are we thinking? Are we wishful thinking? What are we doing? Pink sheet here, guys. Anybody notice it?
We can't read it.
Anybody? I'm just wondering, does anybody know what those are? Where those
As part
dollars
of-
are coming from?
Alderman Burris, as part of the 5-year capital plan, we do our planning and we look at selecting, for instance, in 2012, what grant we might apply for with the Department of Natural Resources.
But this is private donation.
Right. So what I'm saying is in the planning process, we're looking at how we might fund a project. So I'm not sure. I don't have the sheet with me. I can go back and take and pull it up.
I think that's really important. If you're saying private funding, it would be great to know where that's coming from. Did somebody say they were going to donate? Did someone? Somebody has to have pulled a number out of a hat somewhere.
And again, I think one of the challenges you have with an out-year capital plan is that in many cases it's staff making some determinations based on discussions that are happening in the community, and as we look at budgets, we make approximations. As those project years get closer, in my experience, if those don't become real, those projects either drop off the list or their funding mechanism changes. So it's an inexact science as to how this happens. Well, and again, Alderman Burris, every project is a little bit different. I think the staff over time, as they've been working on these types of projects, have seen private donations. Mr. Gaynor, I think, has consulted his notes, and he may have some more specifics on these projects. But just in general terms, though, it's not an exact science, and there may not be anything more than a casual conversation made with a group or a donor. But as we move forward with the planning over a 5-year period, those numbers get put in place.
The Curry Park project was simple, and unfortunately.
It's from the Carvalli Montessori School, and it's a solid $200,000.
The sale of the school, part of that agreement was that because they were going to expand the school into the park, there was a mitigation. And so the $200,000 is real money. It's been deposited. And once they've made their improvements, we will go ahead then and mitigate those improvements by reestablishing what.
That just wasn't made clear. Thank you.
Are you finished, Alderman Burris?
I think those are all the private donations out there.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, I wanted just to clarify that the animal shelter private donation has been codified, and it is an agreement, a written agreement and contract with the city of Evanston that there's going to be a shared expense on their capital improvement of expanding the shelter. So that's, I mean, we don't participate unless they generate the capital donations, and they are working on that. So it's, I would say it's either guaranteed or it doesn't happen. So you can't get more secure than that.
Alderman Nguyen? Okay. Thank you. Joe Allen.
The next area is special assessments, and we've talked about this, and there are quite a few projects here that will be funded through special assessments, starting with alley pavement through the 50/50 sidewalk program, block curb and sidewalk, down to street light upgrades, and stripping lighting and signal maintenance. And then the next area is sewer. We have emergency sewer work, sewer lining, and sewer repairs on street improvements, which are projects that occur every year. TIF, we have neighborhood traffic calming and downtown brick replacement programs. And then lastly is water, where we have the security improvements, tuck pointing, the zebra mussel system repair, water main installation, and asbestos removal. What we're looking for in summary here for your consideration on November 22nd. And again, the GO projects, we will come back. So these are the projects either that will be reauthorized to carry over, as well as the projects that would be funded through other sources.
Alderman Burris?
Just to clarify, under the neighborhood traffic calming and pedestrian bicycle accommodations, we just have 10,000? That's correct?
Out of the Washington TIF.
Yeah. Okay. That's just for that. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. I don't see any further lights.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, that concludes our overview of the capital program. We are ready to answer any questions the council may have regarding the proposed 2011 budget.
Alderman Burris.
I know that it's probably too late now to look at other ways to do parks and forestry, but for next year, can we ask the Parks and Forestry folks to look at ways to do privatization, outsourcing? I think that Suzette Robinson, Director of Public Works, has done a remarkable job of finding ways to save money, and it would be great if other departments can start looking at that as well, just to kind of get a jump on this year, for next year. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, City Manager.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, perhaps I can take a few minutes to talk about forestry issues, because certainly we've heard from many community members concerned about forestry issues. I think Alderman Burris raises some important issues on where we go forward with the important trees of the city of Evanston. We spend a lot of money on trees, and we spend a lot of money doing a lot of different things to trees. I think for a casual observer, you would think, okay, you're going to trim a tree, and that's all you need to do. When they die, you replace it. It's a much more complicated process here in the city of Evanston, and as we've worked with some of our area communities on the very issues of outsourcing as well as insourcing, we have discovered that while we have many services that are very similar to our neighbors, we also do many things that are different. And what we would like to do in the coming year is find out what the best balance is for Evanston. I've certainly have heard loud and clear from residents and from members of this council that you feel that the proposed changes for the inoculation are inappropriate, and would like to propose that we come up with a solution to put those back into the budget. One of the challenges we have faced over time with budgeting this inoculation program is that there is an additional cost above and beyond the annual cost every third year. And we have been putting money aside to do that in a special fund, generally on a consistent basis, but perhaps not as consistently as we should, in order to ensure that we are able to do this over time. We have gone back and looked in that sub-fund. We believe there is enough funding available in that sub-fund to make up the cuts that have been proposed so that we can fully fund those inoculations for next year. And so would propose, unless the council has an objection, to restore that funding, and would come back to you based on other discussions you have this evening on Wednesday evening with a proposal to balance out the budget, because I think there's certainly other issues you would like to speak to. In addition, there are a few maintenance cuts on the budget. I think that I would hope that the council would consider perhaps one of those positions, and perhaps we would look to restore the other two, because I think one of the options that we have is not only contracting out for services, but contracting in for services. And Mrs. Earl, and other members of our staff have been working through a process that's been convened by the Village of Glenview. And all of our surrounding communities, I think without exception, contract for tree maintenance. We are the only city in the area that has city forces maintaining trees. That tells me a couple of things. One, it tells me that we're unique, and that's not unusual. It also tells me, though, that there are probably opportunities for us to come up with a hybrid system, where there may be opportunities for us to contract out portions of our maintenance of our trees, service of our trees, because certainly inoculation is part of that. But there may be opportunities for us to take the expertise and the staff and the equipment that we have and make it available to Wilmette and Glenview and Northbrook and Des Plaines and other communities. I think it's 10, 15, 18 communities in our immediate area that are participating in these discussions. And I think many of them would like to know that there are municipal employees maintaining their trees, and their residents would like to know there's municipal employees maintaining their trees. So those discussions are ongoing. Alderman Burris, we don't have an answer for you this evening on how that will all work out. But we believe that we can restore the funding for the inoculation. We believe that we can come up with a revised budget proposal to the council that would restore most, if not all, of the forestry positions, and then let Mr. Gaynor and Mr. DiAgostino take their traveling salesman bag out to places like Glenview, Northbrook, and Wilmette, and Lincolnwood, and other communities, and see, can we leverage the investment and the expertise that we have to our benefit, and quite honestly, look and see if there are some portions of maintaining our urban forest that we could look to outsource. So that's kind of where we are, where I am at least, with trees and forestry issues. I would hope the council is getting to a point where you're looking to make some decisions, and I would recommend at this point that we would fully fund the inoculation program, and that we would be able to come back as part of some other decisions after you've had some discussions this evening with a revised proposal to balance the overall budget that would include, if not funding all those positions, many of the positions that are being proposed to be eliminated in forestry.
Thank you. I think it would be very wise if we stuck to this topic and got some closure on some portion of the budget. Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, if we are going to inoculate our Dutch elms, we should be realizing then some savings in what it costs to take down those elms otherwise. And can that be part of staff's analysis of where we go with our forestry?
It can, and I think if we need to make an adjustment, our plan would be to kind of gather up all of the comments and thoughts tonight and come back with a new proposal to look at Wednesday evening, and we can include that as part of that proposal.
Alderman Tendem?
This sort of a similar related part of that same question. We suggested maybe looking at inoculating all the Parkway elms, not just the ones in the signature and standalone program. We know that the cost for the average cost for taking down an elm tree is around $2,000. We may not have the money on hand, but it seems like it's a good investment in the not too long run to keep these trees healthy, that we aren't taking them down at the cost of $2,000 each. And I think that's an addition of about 800, or actually less than 800, 700 some trees that would be included then. Maybe we're pushing too hard, but it seems to me that the cost does justify looking at it. Cost savings.
Alderman Fisk?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I think the fiscally responsible thing really is to go back or go to inoculating all of our elms. And it just makes perfect sense to me. Mr. City Manager, or Madam Mayor, either one of you, I would like you just to remind us remember last year we were taking straw votes, and could you just remind us and the community how we will be handling decisions regarding items in the budget?
So happy you asked, Alderman Fisk. For those who don't follow this all twists and turns as carefully as you probably should, the City Council, sitting as the Rules Committee, met in October to discuss your budget deliberation process. And you decided at that time that once the public hearing had concluded, and that has already concluded, that you were comfortable dealing with budget decisions in two ways. You were comfortable doing straw votes, but a straw vote could be reopened at the request of any member of the council. However, you're also comfortable with making formal motions and going through the regular city council process, and that then a formal motion to be reconsidered would have to go through the same formal reconsideration process. So those are the two ways that you agreed to conduct business.
Alderman Nguyen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Alderman Grover and Alderman Tendon asked some of the questions I was going to ask in terms of understanding, first, injecting all of the elms, as I think, as someone who was here for the discussion that we had 6 years ago, one of the critical issues that was of concern to those members of the council who voted against injecting all of them, I was someone who voted in favor, was that we didn't have the hard data to indicate what the likelihood of success was. We had some data, but it was not as good as what we obviously have now. So clearly, it was much more of a success than we even hoped back then. And so I think that we should take the fiscally prudent step now of inoculating them all. In addition, can we look to see if there are any other additional savings, for instance, by not having the vehicle that drives around so that the forestry workers can spot for elm disease? If we're inoculating so many trees and we have a 99+% success rate, do we need to continue to do the spotting to the extent that we have? So all of the things that went into checking elms, can we understand what those costs are and what potentially we might save?
Don't we spot private elms?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. They have multiple jobs. Is that the only other job, Mr. Kainer? They do other things as well. And again, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I think what I'm trying to convey is we hear the council's concern about this issue, and in order to be mindful of your time and other issues, we will come back with a proposal Wednesday evening to address these issues.
Alderman Rainey?
Could Paul or Doug refresh my memory as to what trees, when we're doing the spotting, do we decide need a cutout? If we see a little tiny elm tree, do we do a cutout, or is it only with the trees that we've identified as being eligible for inoculation. And then I have one more comment when I hear this answer.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. Alderman, the cutouts are defined by the amount of symptoms we spot within any given tree.
Regardless?
Regardless of the
Okay.
size of the tree.
All right.
So it's 5% or less.
Okay, so I think what is really interesting in the latest memo that we have is that the number of cutouts performed each year fluctuates from a range of 121 cutouts in 2004 to a low of 3 cutouts in 2010. I think that's just, that's just an amazing improvement. Second of all, we have a franchise for garbage collection and contracts for commercial. Everybody has to use the same, unless they're exempt in a few cases. I'm wondering, because of the issue of private elm tree injections, why we couldn't negotiate a deal regardless of whether or not we use private injection company for private trees. What would be the reason keeping us from doing that, so as to make it more affordable for people with private elm trees?
We plan on adding that to the contract for 2011, is to require the successful bidder to be able to offer their price not only in 2011, but in 12 and 13 as well.
Because we weren't doing that.
No, we were
haven't-
not.
No, okay, all right, so we are going to do that.
Yes.
I'm-
I mean,
is
they
that in
may
there?
offer up a higher price for those out years, but we can at least tie them into a specific price.
And about what kind of savings do you project that would be for the private elm tree owner?
It's hard to say until I get the bids in
I know,
next year.
but,
It could be $2 or $3 per inch.
Savings?
Savings, yes.
Oh, that would make a big difference, yeah. All right, thank you.
Alderman Grover?
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Alderman Fisk, for the reminder about how we proceed with our budget deliberations. I think out of deference to Alderman Wilson, who's not here tonight, that although he can watch our conversation, our discussion, that we save the decisions until he's here. Hope that's all right.
I would second that if you make that a motion.
All right.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
He hopes to be here Wednesday, not for the beginning of the meeting, but at some point during it.
And I have no doubt he'll be up to speed the minute he walks in the door.
Well, I don't know if are we on TV tonight, or there was
We are live around the world, yes.
We
Madam
are
Mayor.
live again. There was some question at the beginning of the meeting.
I do have a question as to trees. Have our efforts towards identifying the private elm losses been successful in getting the private owners to inoculate their trees, or to take them down? Right, it's a violation.
We have certainly been able to convince some folks to take up injecting their private elms, but in today's economy, that's a hard sell. People have become much more aware of the problem, put it that way. Our insurance program has remained fairly constant, which is a good sign.
And if half our time identifying diseased elms is directed to the private elms, then I guess I'd hope there'd be a better response from the private owners in addressing the disease in their trees.
I wish there was too.
And when the city has to resort to taking down a private elm, do we charge residents for does that happen?
We don't perform the actual removal on private property. There's two different reasons for that. The first main reason is for liability. We can't go on private property and do that kind of work, which is why we specifically offer the insurance program. People can pay the annual premium of, between $60 and $120 and have their tree removed at our cost through the insurance program. Some removals can be upwards of $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on private property. The remaining people that do not have the insurance are forced to bear the cost themselves.
Alderman Burris?
My comment was just about not voting on anything because Don's not here.
Alderman Rainey?
I believe that I attended a hearing one time in this room where we were asking the court to order a tree be taken down. And I thought that we then, if the homeowner refused, that we would take it down and lien their property. Has that not happened?
That's not quite true. We do take a few people to court who refuse, and if the court agrees, then we hire a contractor.
And I'm not talking about forcing them to inoculate. This is way beyond inoculation when the tree had Dutch elm
That's correct, yes.
disease. Right.
But in those cases, we actually turn around and get quotes from private contractors
Well,
to take
that's
the
what I
tree down.
meant.
Yes,
But, I mean,
yes.
I didn't mean you go in.
No.
So we can force, I mean, because that is a danger to all the trees. in
Right, the
Evanston.
longer they stand as diseased elms, the more contagious they become. Fortunately, we've only taken people to court maybe half a dozen times in the last 5 years or so. Most people eventually comply.
Alderman Nguyen?
Paul, how do we determine what the rate is for the elm insurance?
I look at the past year's expenditures and what I'm predicting as a loss rate, and we just try to keep a balance in the fund. I also look at current prices that our contractors charge us to remove these trees.
I don't know very much about insurance, but is it possible to make the cost of injecting a private elm less than the cost of the elm insurance?
I could look at that. Seems like a hard sell, though. But I could definitely look at those numbers.
Right, but I think that, I don't know quite what the analysis is, but if you can incentivize people to show them that the inoculation is actually less expensive than the insurance cost, then you might get more people to comply, and we all would benefit.
Right. I will look at that.
Alderman Burris?
Are we off trees now? Can we go to
We
something
can
else?
be on any subject you wish.
Well, I didn't want people stop talking from trees. Wanted to talk about revenues. It looks like there's only really a handful of revenue streams that are going to be going up this year. Almost all the rest are in deficit to about 14.3 million less in revenue. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. It's a little disturbing. Also, there are some discrepancies in the, particularly in the transfer from other funds. This budget versus next year proposed, and at the end it says what the difference is. There's some problems with the numbers.
Are you on a particular page, Alderman Burke?
I'm actually online. Sorry, that's my, but on 57000 where it starts transfer from other funds, there's a whole bunch that there's no change from what last year to this year, but at the end it says that there is a change. So just the numbers need to be looked at, and we don't need to go through them line by line. 51 online. But my question is more of, do we really believe that only a handful of revenues are going up? I mean, building permits are one that are going up, and I'm wondering where that number's coming from as well. So if we could just talk a little bit about the revenue projections.
Sure, and I'll ask
Thanks.
Mr. Lyons to come up to deal with the building permit piece. I think we've tried to be as prudent as possible. I think both Mrs. Earl and I have looked at previous council revenue projections and have not been comfortable with them.
I agree with you. I just wanted to know.
And so that's, the philosophy has been
Right.
to be as prudent as possible. We are still very concerned about what's going to happen with the state of Illinois, and this budget does not specifically address one particular line item that says here's what's going to happen. If we are more fortunate, if the economy continues to turn, we will have uses for those funds, I figure. So I'd rather that we be as prudent as possible. Mr. Lyons has joined us at the microphone, and he can talk about the budget projections for the permit fees.
Super, thank you.
Good evening, Marty Lyons, Interim Director.
She mentioned transfer from other funds, but she wanted revenue category, so he can address.
I think actually Alderman Burst did a fairly good job because most of them are pretty flat citywide. And so we are taking a somewhat, I would say, a little bit of a pessimistic approach. I think we've looked at the last two budgets of where revenues have gone down substantially. So to be flat, we feel shows that the economy is turning a little bit, but we also just want to be prudent. We don't want the council to approve expenditures on revenues that aren't real. So that's why I think overall you see very few that are proposed to be much more than current year, what we would expect the year end to be.
Yeah, I was just going to agree. The transfer is about $545,000 less than last year, but overall pretty flat.
Alderman Jean-Baptiste, was that, we can go into specific revenue lines if you'd like.
Well, go ahead.
Marty Lyons, Interim Director of Community Economic Development, members of council, Mr. City Manager. The revenues for building permits, we did include something in your Friday packet this last time that showed a year-to-date through 8 months where we were at approximately $2.2 million on a $3 million, a little bit more than a $3 million budget. So right on track, 2/3 of the way through, and that does not include a major building permit for the Mather, which is coming in shortly. Shortly meaning that I've just had discussions with permit staff that they've come in and finalized numbers. So now it's just a matter of when will they finish up any work prior to permitting. We think it will happen before February 28th, so you will have a permit, a large permit on the high side of $500,000 coming in from one source. That will take us up over budget. For next year's numbers, we look at a similar viewpoint of where are we at on all of the small permits. And to give you an example, right now we have, I think the staff has told me, we average about 400 or so roof permits, and we have over 600 that have gone through because of a determination of that there was hail damage, even though there was no, that you wouldn't have seen hail damage in the city of Evanston. But we have over 600 roofing permits that have gone through this fiscal year. And it's those kinds of small permits that are boosting our revenues this year. We're conservative in the fact that we're looking at that same level of activity next year and the potential for one other large permit based on plans already submitted from the university.
Alderman Rainey.
Say again what you provided us in our packet on Friday, a year-to-date revenue?
Yeah, it should have been a one-page memorandum from Jeff Murphy that took up the whole page, and I will...
And Alderman Rainey, you're very familiar with this report. No, I don't believe it. It was in the Friday packet. It's,
I have my whole Friday packet right here.
And let me pull up the page quickly.
Oh, is it on? Oh, was it online?
Well, it was part of the PDF that we sent you on Friday.
Oh, but it wasn't in our Friday packet that we got delivered.
No, it wasn't.
It was not in the. It was in the PDF version that was emailed to you. And Alderman Rainey, as you recall, that's a report that you especially are fond of that had been missing the last month or two, and it was only the summary page, not the detail. So we will provide you the detail, but Mr. Lyons is referring to the summary page that was in the Friday packet.
And just to address the other revenues that Alderman Jean-Baptiste did discuss, the sales tax, I think we've been neither conservative nor liberal on that. It's just what we're seeing, and we don't, from the development side, we don't see presently a new sales tax provider coming in where we're about to bring in a Walmart or someone like that. So we don't have that where we would have anyone coming in that next 12 months, so it's best to be flat with that. I think we've done a good job as far as accurately projecting where we're at on the income tax side, but as the manager pointed out, we don't know if that will be withheld. If you take a look at the quarterly financial report, actually the monthly financial report that also went out on Friday, we discussed that our receivables are higher than we'd like, meaning our cash is not as high as we'd like, but that we have a fund balance of $13 million and a cash balance of $5 million. And that's actually better than I would have anticipated 5 months ago from the state of Illinois. We still have issues to deal with, but we think that the revenue projections are fairly solid.
Alderman Rainey, did you have anything else?
Yes, I have one other question, and it doesn't need to be answered now, but it's information I think we'd all like. We're having a tremendous number of foreclosures. Today, or Friday packet, we received a listing of new foreclosures, 10 pages of foreclosures in every ward, I think but seven. That's the only ward I noticed not. Lots in the 3rd, lots in the 8th, lots all across the board. 6, I was shocked at the number in 6. I have it with me here. And I'm wondering, because I know a couple of foreclosures that I'm following in my ward that have literally hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxes owed on individual properties. I'm wondering how, across the board, do we know if banks that are taking over properties are paying taxes? I know of one that did, but now it's been moved to another bank, and the new bank is not paying taxes on foreclosures. Do we have any idea how that's affecting our revenue?
Not yet, other than I will say that we were supposed to have 55%. This last year was the year we were supposed to get 55% of our property taxes in the first installment. We did not get 55%. We're at approximately 47% or so. So I think it is having an impact, and we can follow up with the specifics, because I wouldn't want to say anything more.
It's got to be really affecting the schools. I mean, it's just got to be really hitting them. I mean, you just figure one property that owes over $100,000 in taxes, just do the math. We get 20%, they get 80 almost.
And we do count on that revenue as being somewhere between 97 and 100% every year. When it doesn't happen, that will also be something to consider in our end-of-year determination of revenue versus expenses. And unfortunately, with the county not sending out the bills until now, we don't have a good gauge. We won't know until the end of this fiscal year where we end up, where we would know by January pretty much how we were doing with the county. If they would have had them out September, October, we'd know right about now or in the next month whether we were going to be on target for taxes.
Alderman Jean-Baptiste.
Same vein of revenue, if you guys would take a look at page 140 of the packet that we received this Friday. This is a memo regarding the yard waste sticker revenue and other related revenues. Am I interpreting this correctly, that we fell significantly below the projected revenue? Because if my math is correct, that means from the projection, last year's projection, we fell over $1.5 million short. Is that correct, City Manager?
Alderman Jean-Baptiste, members of the council, these are still numbers. We're still in the midst of the fiscal year. Ms. Robinson's coming to the podium, and we'll address the question.
Okay, and at the same time, too, we seem to be projecting more revenue, almost 1.5 times the amount of money that we projected last year for the coming fiscal year. Did you hear my question, or you
No,
want me
I
to
did not.
repeat it?
I was on my way, sorry.
Okay.
The waste, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Page 140, I mean, on that page is a discussion of the budgeted revenue. You had a total budgeted for $3,258,400. And the revenue to date is $1,653,121. So if you could, and I see you've explained, but you projected more revenue for next year than you did for this year. And so since we have fallen so, first of all, is it correct that we have fallen so significantly short? And secondly, why do we project such high revenue for next year? And how do you
Now, when you're talking about the projected revenue, are you looking at the projected revenue in the memo?
It's for this year,
I'm looking
right?
at your
all within this-
revenue to date.
Right.
You have yard waste cart fee, $300. And then you projecting next year $70,000. You have yard waste stickers, $96,443. Budgeted revenue, $950,000. You see the line that I'm?
Yes, I understand.
So this is what I'm seeking an explanation.
Okay, the revenue to date, that's the number that currently is listed in our financial system. So that's the money that we have actually received. The budgeted revenue is what was in the budget book. The projected revenue is not the revenue for next year, but this is the revenue we anticipate receiving for the balance of this year. The sanitation service charge is a huge part of that revenue amount. The bills went out in November for September and October. And so that revenue will not be represented. So we have 2 billing cycles of the water fee, sanitation service charge, that will come in for this year. So we expect the revenue to end the year at $2.3 million for the sanitation service charge. So those projected revenues are where we think we'll end this year. So we're actually going to end up $300,000 short of where the budget said we would end up.
Okay.
For this year.
I thought it was much shorter than that, but okay, I can understand that. So, but the total, that's just for the service charge, right? You're saying in total, you will only be $300,000 short?
Yes, in total we're $300,000 short.
And
projections. No, this is the memo. And could you reiterate again the basis for the shortfall?
We had several things. The major impact is the revenue for the yard waste stickers, which is, and that, when we established the revenue for the yard waste program, although it all fell under stickers, it really impacted several other areas, meaning that the special pickup fees for yard waste, we anticipated that revenue going up. So part of that $950,000 was going to show itself in other categories, and that just didn't happen, or is not projected to happen as dramatically as we thought it would. The other thing that impacted the lower sticker sales is we actually sold a lot of carts. We had a lot of people switch over, which is good, and so that's why we have the carts revenue well above what we expected our cart sales to be, almost triple the amount, well, 2.5 times the amount of cart revenue. So, but that takes away from the sticker revenue. And those are really the main reasons why we had projected a kind of a low-end spectrum for stickers and a high-end spectrum when we did this proposal, and we are coming in at the low end of that spectrum.
And nevertheless, we're realizing a savings, right, from what we used to do before?
Oh, yes, yes. Well, the revenue was offsetting our cost, so that is a positive thing, but the switches, the change from the contracting out, that's a whole nother set of savings that we're going to experience. Some of that will come in for the balance of this year, and the rest will happen next year. We'll be able to see the full impact of the change for next year.
Okay, so where you have the total projected revenue, this is the total projected revenue for this fiscal year?
That's correct.
Okay, and what is the projected revenue for this coming fiscal year?
I don't have that number. Do you have that?
I mean, it's probably, you probably have a line item. You got it? This is supposed to be for this year. That's the $2,940,000.
That's the projected revenue for the end of this fiscal year. This fiscal year.
All right. And can somebody point us out to the projected revenue for next fiscal year?
Mrs. Earl is looking at, and she's going to pick up the microphone, and while she picks up the microphone, I'll remind you that the number she's about to give you is 10/12.
10/12.
So it's going to be a number that's smaller because of a 10-month fiscal year.
Okay, well, you could
and she's
you could get that to us.
And
you know, since we can't find it, you could
Well,
get that
it's
to
gonna
us.
it's gonna show up in several different accounts. It's not gonna just be in one location. So we gotta do some math. I'll grab a book and go do the math while you guys.
We'll get you that answer in a little bit tonight.
Okay, fine.
But it will be a lot closer to the real number.
I do have another area that I wanted to discuss, and that is the 311 center. I had asked city manager, I guess you maybe didn't hear me, for, you know, an analysis as to how we may be able to provide this kind of service, but at a lower cost, sort of pared down. Because in light of the crisis that we have currently, you have projected to spend really, where is it? No, it's really $783,383.
$683,000.
700, because you have $103,000 that you doing some facilities upgrade.
And that'll be done in the current year. That's a one-time cost in the current year.
Okay, I don't have a problem with it. I'm just saying it's going to cost us 783, as opposed to 600. And what we would end up providing is double the amount of coverage in terms of length of time that we spend responding to citizen concerns and inquiry and complaints. It's about 17 hours a day. And we would be putting 12 people to work providing this kind of service. So, I mean, that's a very large increase in this kind of service. And in your memorandum, you also explained that, you know, the concerns, the inquiry, the complaints, the request for service would increase over time as citizens experience greater service. So we'll be trying to market this so more people could participate. And, you know, I think that we need to take a look at how we might be able to provide the services that we want to provide, the customer care services, at a lower budgeted amount. I don't know what kind of complaints we have coming in after 4:30. and on Saturdays and Sundays. This may be a great thing to happen, but I don't know whether we have a need for it. It may be that, other cities that are bigger than us, who they have more issues, may need this kind of service. But I think we need to think about that some more and try to see whether or not we could not provide this increased service, greater customer service to the rest of the constituents without expanding $783,000. So I don't know. I mean, I've heard from a couple colleagues up here say, well, they have questions and concerns, and maybe we need to discuss these concerns so we can get clear on what we want and how much we want to pay for.
And Madam Mayor, if I can respond. I've been fortunate to be the city manager of Evanston for the last 14 months, and I think the 311 initiative that it proposed is probably the most important single change to the municipal government in that period of time. I think because of the cuts that we're seeing in service, because of the ability of people to reach out to us, not everyone has an internet, not everyone knows to contact a particular person in a particular department to get things done. I think this service is probably more needed now than ever and will only increase. We anticipate we'll receive 150,000 calls in the first year alone. The rule of thumb is about 2 per resident, so we're looking at about 150,000 calls.
What do we get now?
We don't know, and that's the other part, is that we don't service our residents in any kind of systematic way for all municipal services to really know. We can tell you exactly how many people call 911 for police and fire service. We can tell you time of day. We can tell you what they needed. We can tell you how quickly we responded. I cannot tell you how many people call to complain about their green waste not being picked up. I cannot tell you how many people call to complain about street sweeping not happening. I cannot tell you how many people call with complaints about code enforcement. I cannot tell you any of the number of things people call us about. And I'm very concerned as we move forward that unless we have good data to help you make better decisions in the future, that will not happen. I'm also concerned that we are not going to be able to have the staff available in our departments to respond. And I don't believe we have it now in many departments. So the streamlining of this, the ability for a resident to not have to know what number to call, they'll have to know one number, 311, to be able to call and reach out and be able to have that service dispatched or to have that question answered in one step is very valuable. Now, I also understand that this is very difficult budget times, and while I feel very strongly that this is important to move forward with because I think the residents of Evanston need this service, and we need, quite honestly, to be able to provide it in order to keep up with those services, I do think it would be appropriate to amend the proposal that you have before you for fewer hours, because I think one, I think we'll know more in a year. I think we'll know more once it's been up in a while. And quite honestly, the reality is of this is that there are lots of issues before you that are important. And we want to be able to have a balanced budget, but have a balanced budget that makes sense for all of Evanston. So what I'd like to do, again, as I suggested with the forestry change, is to come back with a proposal on Wednesday that would have us continue to move forward with the implementation of 311, that would have us reduce hours to a number less than what's being proposed, and have the ability to pay for that, as well as pay for the other changes that the council will likely make in the budget.
And I understand that's very important to you, city manager, and I respect you in terms of the leadership you're trying to provide. But if you think about it, last week I talked about the fact that in your budget memo, you talked about that it will become increasingly difficult to present any more cuts in services that you feel do not go to the core services that we're providing. And so this seems to be an anticipation of the fact that we are cutting back so much that we need more people to take complaints.
Not more.
Then hold on 1 second. More people to take complaints for a longer period of time. So then who's going to go out and troubleshoot these complaints?
Our capable, competent staff that are already doing it.
Yeah,
That's the beauty of this process.
That's why the logic of it for me, And I understand, providing that kind of component service is important. But as you go back and think about it, I think that, if we assume, if our collective experience says to us that the 8.5 hours a day of services for 5 days a week is not adequate, or if we're saying that we're not efficiently responding to inquiry within those hours, then I could see us strengthening our customer service that we provide during those hours. But to expand it to 7 days a week and for an additional almost 8.5 hours per day, and to put more people working at that, it doesn't seem to me to run in a way that is responsive to what our needs, what our experiences have been. So I'm calling on you to really consider this seriously.
Alderman Burris?
Great, thanks. And I apologize that I'm doing mine online, and many of you are not. But under the swank fees, I'm assuming that those.
Wait, could we just stay on 311 for a minute?
Sorry. Online,
Question
page
on
49. Sorry.
Alderman Burris, they'd like to stay on 311.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll go back to revenues when you're done with 311.
Until
I
we're done.
apologize for that.
All right, do you have anything you want to say on 311?
I think it's an awesome idea, but I think part of the problem is that that we haven't done a good enough job of saying how much it's going to save us overall. And I believe that's what we need to do in order to really get buy-in. Long term, it's the right thing to do, I believe. I think it'll save us money, not only on personnel cost, but also on frustration from residents being bounced around from one place to another. I know in my professional life, it's one thing that's frustrating for people if they don't have a central portal to come into to get where they need to go. So long term, I completely applaud what you're doing, and I just think you need to do a better job of saying how it's going to save us money. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to call in the order your lights went on, and if you don't have anything on 311, we'll get back to you shortly. Alderman Grover?
Thank you. I, like Alderman Burris, would like to get back to revenue a little bit and agree with what she said about 311. I'd like to add that for a lot of the residents that I hear from, longtime Evanston residents who you'd think would be able to navigate their way in city government, but cannot and do not and are frustrated. And so I think there will be a big payoff in how we connect with our residents when they get a response using 311. But we also talk about doing comprehensive program reviews of our departments to find out, to assess their responsiveness and their effectiveness and how well we deliver services. And I think the 311 is going to give us a lot of that information and data about how effective and responsive we are. So just for that reason, to give us another data point on how well we evaluate the services the city provides, I think it's of great value. In addition to providing an essential service to those residents who really who I think are, at this point, not calling the city to get what they need because they don't know where to call and how to do it. And they call us, and, right, and we
Nothing
help
else
them, but-
works, they call me.
Right. So, and what I also like about 311 is that I will still know who's making the calls from residents that I serve, and will have a good sense of what their issues are, where the gaps in services are, where we need to maybe focus our attention a little more. I can track trends. If there have been a series of no yard waste pickups on one street, then maybe there's an issue there. So we'll still get that information. Actually, we'll get a great deal more information than we do now about how well our residents are being served.
Thank you. Alderman Holmes?
I just wanted to comment because I think one of our speakers earlier in the citizens' comments also mentioned about what happens after 5 o'clock. And just this evening, since I've been here, I had 2 calls. One I was able to handle with Mr. Stoneback before I came up here. People call afterwards. Issues happen, and maybe it doesn't happen in other wards, but I get calls all the time after 5 o'clock. The only place I can call if I need something done immediately is the police department, because those are the only people that are there. I could call the fire department, I guess, but I always call the police department, and have to send someone out to do something that is not necessarily their jobs. And I think that Alderman Grover said it best in terms of at our Human Services Committee meeting, that our police department has to often do lots and lots of social service kinds of things that happen. Those things, life happens after 5 o'clock for people that live in this community. And so I'm really thankful that, that we're doing this. I know that it's expensive, but I think in the long run, we're going to save lots and lots of money. But I think we're going to be able to service our citizens, our residents, much, much better. And I think that's what's going to be important.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, I think it's a great idea after 5 o'clock, but I'm not so sure about during the day. One of the things that I think we should have been doing all along, and we haven't been doing it, I don't believe, at least not up to the standard I'd like to see, and that is more supervision of the services we provide. And I think the problem that we have is that, for example, if we had 311, I don't know how that would have gotten yard waste collected this week, garbage collected this week, or recycling collected this week, or cans picked up this week, or delivered this week, or any of that, because everybody knew that wasn't happening, except evidently our staff. So, I mean, we've switched over to a new service. We should have been out there roaming the alleys, making sure business was being done properly. I think people calling about getting a tree trimmed. Where's the city on all of this? Why does it take a person at a 311 center at the police department? One thing I can't get explained to me is, how is this going to affect calls to the police station? In Chicago, when you have a police issue, no emergency, everyone calls 911 now, because they've instituted 311. So you have a non-police issue, you call 311. All police calls now go to 911 in the city of Chicago. Improperly parked car, somebody blocking a driveway, it's all 911 now. And I'm just hoping that we don't switch to that, because I think we have enough problems over there. Also, I didn't quite understand in the memo the interaction between the police service desk and the 311 people. It looks like there's going to be some interaction there. I also don't understand if they're going to be service desk officers. They're going to be that category, correct? What union are they going to belong to? I saw IMRF in the personnel benefits, but isn't our service desk connected to one of the police unions?
Madam Mayor, Alderman Rainey, we have designated them as Teamsters. They are civilian members of the Teamsters Union.
They're going to be Teamsters, yeah. I mean, and they're going to be part-time?
There are full-time and part-time positions.
Because you said there's how many equivalent full-time? I forget.
12.
12.
As is currently proposed.
All right, so 12 full-time equivalents, but how many, are all 12, or however many, whatever the configuration is, are they all going to be receiving benefits, including, are they all going to be members of the union?
Mr. McCrae has been working on this project for the last 9 months, and I'll ask him to come up. And Joe, perhaps you could also talk a little bit about the role of the non-emergency police calls and how, if those come to 311, how they'll be handled, and just in general.
Good afternoon, good evening, I should say. Madam Mayor, City Council, Joe McCrae, Assistant to the City Manager. Want to get into what was can you repeat for me, please, the first question? I want to go through systematically.
Part-time employees are their status.
Part-time employees. So the, right now, we've proposed it at 12 full-time equivalents. There would probably not be more than 10 full-time, depending on shift. The rest would be part-time. As proposed in the document, it would be 8 full-time, 8 part-time. So the full-time would get benefits, the part-time would not.
Will they have to join the union?
Yes.
They will.
Yes. Yes.
And so will we pay in, are they going to be part of the police pension plan?
I believe they're going to get IMRF.
A good question,
They're,
Alderman.
and let's say it loud and clear, they are civilian members
They're
of the
civilian,
unit.
not
There are other civilian members of the Teamster unit.
Right.
And so that representation and the classification for retirement are separate.
Right,
All right,
they're
so
non-sworn.
it's, okay.
And Mr. McCray, could you talk a little bit about the police issues and 911 versus 311 and?
Are you
what-
familiar with that, Joe? In Chicago, all police calls go to 911?
Yes, we have visited the City of Chicago's 311 call center. I've been there myself twice. You are correct that they have 911 and 311. For the City of Evanston, what we're proposing for this year is to maintain that police non-emergency phone number. 311 is new. The police non-emergency phone number handles a number of different calls. Chief Eddington could probably go into better detail than I, but they take various reports and different things that 311 probably will not take, to be honest with you. 311 will be for other non-emergency city services of the city. And
Other
so,
than police?
right, there is a link between the two, and the link is the supervision, that the supervisors that we currently have at the police front desk would also supervise the 311 call takers as well.
And as I've met with police staff, and I've recently done a tour talking with all the staff, the 311 has come up from a lot of departments. And the police folks have been the ones that have been most interested in this because they see this as a boon. They see this as an opportunity to maybe not handle as much, especially in the non-9 to 5. I think their biggest concern is that other than 9 to 5, they're asked to do a lot of other city services other than police work. And so they see the opportunity of having those calls go to the proper city staff and not be handled by 911 after hours and on weekends as a real positive. So it will decrease the number of calls to 911, will free up police officers and firefighters to do other things. So while I think it's important, certainly during the day, I think we've also have heard from our staff that they really welcome the opportunity to not have to do some of those things on the weekends, police officers and firefighters, where they can focus instead on police and fire work.
Well, who's going to do it on weekends?
Well, in some cases, Alderman Rainey, members of the council, it's a matter of dispatching it. We will have people, we already have people who work 7 days a week in water, sewer, public works. So this will dispatch those calls efficiently and effectively. I've been told by some folks at police that, the time that it takes under current circumstances to track down the on-call person because a street light is out, that a dispatcher then is spending many minutes doing that versus being available to take the next 911 call. So we hope, again, I think that it's important to have it available after hours and on weekends because stuff does happen after hours and on weekends. And if we can free up time, many of you bring to my attention street lights being out. I think it was maybe Alderman Nguyen. You had talked to you talked to me about 5 different residents who waited 5 days to call in a street light being out. I forget if it was because they didn't know who to call or didn't think it was going to happen or some combination of that. A call to 311, we'll get that to the supervisor on call, and we'll be able to deal with it when it happens. And if it happens after 5 o'clock or on a Saturday or Sunday, we'll do it more quickly than we would with the current system, which is the front desk folks then take the time to track it down, may not always have the most current numbers. We'll have all of our 311 operators have that information. So lots of different positives with that.
Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I agree that in isolated cases like streetlights out, that it really does make sense to have this system. I'm concerned about the cost. And that's what I'm hearing the most of, is $700,000 on a system that we haven't even spent this year collecting data on. And I wish that we had, since we've been talking about this for such a long time, been keeping and tracking telephone calls at the front desk that come in, what departments they go to, and so I'm concerned about that. My own personal 311 system is Wally's cell phone, but Wally doesn't stay up as late as I do, but he's been very good about that. I do think that we've done an extraordinary job, and I mentioned this to the city manager the other day, of being responsive to our constituents, and especially those that use email and make telephone calls to us. I am a little bit hesitant and I guess worried that my constituents, who I stay in very close contact with, at least try to answer their questions and follow up and make sure that their concerns are answered in a timely manner, that somehow they're going to get a little bit lost. I need to make sure that anyone who calls me is going to get a response as quickly as possible. And I'm only concerned about this because we've had a little bit of trouble and some glitches over the past month or so with the trash collection, garbage pickup. That's very, very hard for residents to have to deal with change. And we've asked them to deal with a lot of change this year, and we're going to be asking them to deal with even more change. I guess I would prefer, given the cost of this, I would prefer that we take some months to get some data, take the year to get the data, and then institute this after a period of time.
And Madam Mayor, members of the council, if I could ask Mr. McCray to talk about the about 6 months of data gathering that we have been doing and the work that you have done, Mr. McCray, meeting with each and every department, and if you could also share the data collection we've done on the front desk.
Yes, we have been, for the last 6 months, collecting a great deal of data, going to various other call centers throughout the state, and then also looking at our own information here. We are limited in terms of tracking telephone data by the system that we had in place prior to. As I noted in my last presentation to the City Council, one of the big improvements we made was at our Civic Center front desk and at the police front desk was putting in a Cisco system that allows us now to better track data, phone volume, et cetera, et cetera. So I do know that at our Civic Center front desk, for instance, we're averaging 130 calls a day, roughly, on a good day, and more than that if there's something going on or an event or whatever have you. But that information was not really available to us until late this summer, and so we have it now. It is the software application that we'll utilize in the call center. It's based on the voice over internet protocol phones, which haven't been rolled out to all the departments yet. And so,
I'm sorry, Joe, do you know where those calls, what departments those calls are going to?
We do know that some of our heaviest call volume goes to Public Works. We know that the building department gets a lot, the building division, I should say. We know that Parks, Forestry, and Parks, Recreation, and Community Services, gets a great deal of phone calls. So we know those three to be kind of our top.
And Alderman Fisk, what we've done working with those departments is we have developed a list of frequently asked questions. So those will be available online for the operators. The front desk right now is a switchboard. There is really very little answering done other than forwarding the phone call.
Absolutely.
So a key difference with 311 is we'll be equipping those operators, I think, how many hundred FAQs we currently have?
Currently, right now, we have over 800 frequently asked questions that we've collected from the various departments over several months, probably the last 2 or 3 months of work. And then we have nearing the neighborhood of 200 actual service requests where you would call us for an actual service, and it's routed to the appropriate person, the appropriate department, and tracked for performance in a timely fashion. That's extensive. I can tell you extensive research. I can't be more appreciative to our departments for sitting down and actually having those meetings where we sat down and kind of hashed out what is it that you do, what is it that residents call for, what are the types of information requests you get, what are the types of service requests you get, and then us charting that out and having that uploaded into the system.
And so those requests, then, Alderman Fisk, members of the council, go directly to the staff members that perform the service. They don't go to the department director first. They don't go to the department director's assistant. They don't go necessarily to a division manager. They go directly to the employee that provides the service. So again, I think that's a real boon, especially for after the regular business hours, because again, we already have water, utility department staff, public works staff working 7 days a week. And so if there's an opportunity for something to come in Friday evening, Saturday morning, we have staff that we're already paying for to either be here working or on call. That will go directly to them, and that request could be taken care of and finished before Monday morning.
I understand all that. I'm just wondering, is there a less expensive way for us to do this?
I think the less expensive way is examining the number of hours a week that it's offered. I think the backbone system I feel comfortable with. I think the question is how many hours, and again, my understanding from the council's discussion is that perhaps this is not the time to implement the 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week schedule. And so I'd like to come back on Wednesday with an alternate proposal that would hopefully cut down the annual cost.
Okay.
Alderman Nguyen.
Well, this has been very helpful, but I am already an enthusiastic supporter of this system. Just in my last month, I can think of at least a dozen phone calls where people have said to me, Melissa, I've called umpty-ump department 4 times and got no response, or talked to someone and then nothing happened, so you're my last call. So I think about how many of those people tried twice to a department and never bothered to call me. They never got their issues resolved, or someone was sent off to do something who wasn't the best person to do it. Just in this past 3 or 4 days, I've called in 2 stoplights that I've noticed that were not working. And fortunately, nothing had happened at those 2 stoplights. I've had people call me several times this week about Sheridan Road. That's what the city manager was referring to, lights that weren't working. And constituents said they were calling me in the evening because that's when they came home and saw that the lights were still out. Someone who can call in very quickly and get a pothole filled. We all know that in bad weather, a pothole just grows exponentially. So by the 5th or 6th day, when they finally remember to call me because they've never heard back from Streets and Sanitation, the savings that we have in just fixing a pothole rapidly, fixing a stoplight quickly, the crime issues that are we never know about what we prevent by getting the streetlights fixed rapidly, and those things, or parking meters. Parking department knows I call in all the time for parking meters that aren't working right. That's revenue we miss for I don't know how many days before it gets fixed. So I think that this is an excellent idea. I think that having it available on weekends is great. That's when I hear from people because their work week is done and they say, I want to give you a call because I'm at home, I'm going through my list of things. So I look forward to actually being able to provide service and not have to type an email saying, I am so sorry that you had to try 5 times. And I can look back through my phone logs over the last 13 years, and I'll tell you how many phone calls I have gotten and what they're about. So I think that this is a terrific system. And if for every person who I know who got on the phone and called Streets and Sanitation or called Public Works, I just imagine how many other people are out there who couldn't figure it out, didn't have the time or thought, I don't know how to start. But 311 would have solved it for them. So I think we should perhaps shave some of the time off, but I think absolutely having some after-hours time. When I think about when I see a stoplight out at 10 o'clock at night, I don't call you, Wally, but I call the Public Works number, which goes onto a recording, and it's dealt with sometime the next day. Meanwhile, what happens at that stoplight? So I think that perhaps shaving a little bit of the time off, but still it's really important to have it available for other times of the day. And I look forward to cutting out all of that red tape and never having to say to someone, I'm sorry that the city did not respond to you.
Thank you. Alderman Jean-Baptiste.
Okay, I know I started
we may
this
have some
discussion,
other issues
and I'm
we
going to
want
close
to
it.
get through.
I'm not opposed to unveiling this, but I am saying that, through each of you guys' comments, you've talked about your constituents have called in, have not gotten the services, they've called you, you've had to come back and try to troubleshoot a system that is not delivering. So the increase in the number of calls that may come in or the number of people that will take the calls will not translate into that into delivery of service, unless there is a real effort to make sure that those service providers, because we're not talking about investing money in making more efficient the service providers. We're talking about investing money in some more people receiving the calls and for longer hours. So, when lights go out in my neighborhood, and they go out often, and I call Wally or I call the police department, and the services are not resolved, it's not because I didn't call in. It's not because I didn't get to the people who are supposed to help me troubleshoot the situation. It's because we're not getting the service provided as we should. The question is, when we become more efficient at getting these calls, we have more volumes, we've marketed this, what happened to the service providers? Where's the level of management that makes sure that the service is provided? So that's my problem.
And Alderman John Baptiste, members of the council, that's the beauty of the system, is that it puts in place a tool that currently does not exist. Right now, if a pothole doesn't get filled, let's say 3 residents call, those calls may be or may not get where they need to go to the 3 people who are providing the service. Those that do get on a regular schedule. If Alderman Nguyen calls me and says this pothole has been taken care of for 3 weeks, get it done, I then call Suzette. Suzette then calls the streets and sanitation supervisor, and those folks, if they have a regular list, generally speaking, that new pothole goes to the top of that list. So rather than efficiently moving through the community, fixing things as they come in, we bop around because all of a sudden we find out here's something that somebody's been calling about for a month's time that hasn't been addressed. That's an inefficient way to deliver service. And as I talk to the folks who do this, they get very frustrated. Why can't we just every day get a list of all the potholes in town, so people know them, and let's start on one end of town and work on the other way, rather than having to jump around because the city manager calls and says this pothole's there, and he's gotten 3 calls from an alderman, and it needs to get fixed. So if we can provide that way to efficiently provide the service, and that's what this does, is every call is in essence a service request. And so those supervisors, and in essence sometimes the people who actually provide the service, they're going to get a little email saying this has been called in, and we're going to come back to the council in January, and we're going to ask you to create something called service level agreements. And we're going to have an agreement that says when a pothole is called in, we're going to have it fixed within X number of hours, let's say 48 hours. And we're going to report to you on a regular basis how many potholes get filled in 48 hours and how many don't. And so we'll be able to measure our abilities based on that service level agreement. So we'll have an agreement with our residents that say this is what we're going to do. But the agreement with our employees is that we're going to get them the information as quickly as possible. We're going to work with them to use this system to schedule the work in an efficient way so that the time may be taking them now to fill 3 potholes, they can do 6 potholes because it's going to be assigned more efficiently.
When you come back with the memo, to address maybe less hours, can you also address how we get efficiency from the service providers? Because I'm not hearing it.
I think we don't need to have all comments be on 311 anymore, but next is Alderman Rainey.
Well, you can fashion it any way you want, city manager. But if somebody calls this city 4 times for one service and cannot get it, there's something broken.
Absolutely.
Other than the phone call not being made to the correct place. This has been my problem with the 311 concept all along. If you have a huge city and millions of departments and millions of services, we have a small city and a good staff, that it takes 4 times and still doesn't get done, there's something broken. I don't care if a priority is given to an alderman and that it takes 4 times to get a pothole fixed is nuts. And something should be done prior to the institution of 311 to make sure that doesn't happen. I don't think we're having pothole issues this summer, however. But there certainly are other issues. I know for a fact, I called to get a special pickup at my house. I said to the person who, I didn't say this is Alderman Rainey, I didn't say, you know, I'm the senior member of the council and I know Wally Bobkowitz. I called up and I said, are you the correct person to call about getting a special pickup? The person said, yes, could you please hold on? Now, maybe they knew it was me because they never came back to the phone. And about 7 minutes later, I said, forget about it, and hung up. So there are certain levels within the organization that need repair. Forget about the potholes. The organization needs repair at certain levels. And I think we ought to really look at that before we spend $600,000, $700,000 on a 311. I'm not opposed to the concept of 311. I think it's a good idea. But I think instead of starting with 311, we should start at another level and take an accounting of our services.
And Alderman Rainey, members of the council, Mr. McCray and his staff have been doing just that since last March.
All right, I have one other thing. You've had all these meetings with all these departments about services required or requested and frequently asked questions. I would think at some point in those efforts, you would have talked to aldermen. I have never been asked, what are some of the things that your constituents ask you about? Or any of the other aldermen. I'm sure we could have been very helpful in that process.
You are absolutely correct, and the system is not done yet by any stretch of the imagination. It's a living and breathing system where we can continue to update over and over again, and I look forward to meeting with you to have that discussion.
It's like bacteria. It's growing.
And Alderman Rainey, one last point. We have done our employees a disservice in many respects by asking some employees to do jobs that they're not trained to do.
I'm sure you're right.
And as we are moving forward, we have eliminated positions of people who are currently doing this work, but we need to change the job. And we need different people with different skills answering these calls. We need to train them differently in order to provide the service that's required.
Let's
and that's
do that.
and with the systems that we're putting in place, and as we've been working with the department since March, we think as we start this, we will have those systems in place. The call takers will be trained to ask the right questions and to send the requests out. But the systems have been broke. I mean, please, I hope no one here thinks that I'm saying that they haven't been. We have very talented, smart people, but we don't always give them the tools to succeed. And 311, I believe, with the customer relationship software, is a tool for them to succeed.
Willing to try.
Alderman Grover.
Joe, while you're still there. No, sorry. Mr. McCray.
Whose phone keeps ringing?
It's not my phone. Will the 311 call center have information about who to contact at our school districts and our major employers for off-hours kind of response? Because
yes.
I see our 311 center acting as kind of a 311 center for even the school districts.
Yes, we're gonna take in as much information we can about as many services throughout this community as possible. So it will be community focused. In some respects, it'll be referrals to particular, you call in and we refer you to the appropriate contact person at the school district per se or the hospital, whatever have you. But yes, we do plan on having that kind of information as well over there. So yes, we are making provisions for that.
Alderman Tandem.
Thank you. I have just a couple of questions about the actual process. If a resident wants to follow up on a call he or she made, say something hasn't happened in a day or two, do they get like a project number, or how do they refer to,
Yes,
to
each,
the?
if I may, Alderman Tindem, each service request is assigned a tracking number, which the call taker will provide to the caller. They can track the request online themselves via our website, or they can call back and provide that number, and we'll provide a status update.
Okay, and when my partner calls and about 15 seconds into the conversation, he wants to talk to your supervisor, what do they say?
They give him your number, Mark.
If you would like to speak to a supervisor, you'll probably get one of our supervisors, or you'll end up speaking to me at some point.
Thank you.
That's funny.
Alderman Burris.
Sorry. I have a I'm sorry, can we move from 311 now, or are we still?
Yes, we can.
Great, fabulous. Going back to revenue projections, there's a line 53,200, which is about beverage, snack, and vending machines. I apologize, page 48 on the online. I have a couple questions about revenue projections. Thanks. Sorry, I'm bad with the book thing. We've gone from 30,000 down to 200, and I'm wondering if that has to do, have we privatized? What have we done with the beverage, snack, and vending machines? I know it's not a lot of money, but it seems weird that we're having such a drastic change.
It's not me.
I don't know, it's
vibrate.
not me.
Could you give the page number once again?
I'm sorry, online, it's page 48, and the number is 53,200 of the revenue title.
Okay.
53,200.
To the bottom.
Sorry. Once again, I know this isn't a lot of money, but it seems just odd.
Let us take that question and come back to you
Right.
with it on Wednesday.
And then my other question is about the athletic contest tax, which is on page 47. Is 51540, and we're reducing it by 100,000. Okay, we know that person went out this week, but I don't know that we're going to go down by 100,000. And just to be careful.
We lost a game.
Pardon?
Are we going to lose a game again, though?
But I don't know the answer to that, but the question is, we should also look to see how much revenue came in last year with 6 games versus how much revenue came in this year with 5 games, considering that there were more people in the stadium. So if we're looking at $100,000 seems like a huge difference when the team is better.
It's not just one team.
No,
Right,
but
this
it's the
isn't-
big one. So
And I think part of it is Joe Ellen has a response to that.
Part of the reason for that, Alderman Burris, relates to the fact that some of that revenue won't come in until January and February, and this is the 10-month budget, and there's.
Right. Okay, I just wanted clarification on it. And then, I'm sorry, just 2 more that just seemed random, that there's a beekeeping one and a daycare license fee that seemed to be 0. And the number is, sorry, I don't have it, I lost it. But if we can just follow up with it, they're once again small
For
numbers.
daycare, licensing, and beekeeping.
Right,
Okay.
but we don't have anything for the chickens.
Oh, I see, it's 53211.
Once again, very small things, but it seems odd that they're just missing out of the budget completely.
And we may convert it to miscellaneous animal
That's
care.
fine.
Okay.
The other thing, if I may follow up on the revenue question with regard to solid waste, we moved that to the enterprise fund, so it does not. We moved solid waste to an enterprise fund this year, so we pulled it out of the general fund revenues. It's on page 158 of the printed budget, and the estimate. You have to actually look at certain line items. That's what Ms. Robinson and I were talking about when she came away from the podium. the estimate for revenue is approximately $2.6 million, to get back to the comparison that you were discussing earlier. For the 10-month. 2.6 million. And it's on page 158, it's Fund 520.
Alderman Grover, did you have a question?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. I appreciated the tax revenue survey information, which were pages 135, 136. I wonder if the... I'm going to provide a little cover for Alderman Rainey. Let me keep asking my question.
I only have one phone. It's right here. It's not ringing.
Back to my question. My question has to do with a survey of building permit fee revenue. And have we done a survey comparing ourselves to neighboring municipalities as to where our building permit fees are in comparison?
One of the things that we want to look at in the upcoming year is a comprehensive fee review for all fees, and that would be included in that. So I can't tell you, we've looked at some of the fees, but not all of the fees. So we want to come back to you probably in the spring or at the beginning of the next budget with the comprehensive fee analysis similar to the tax analysis that was done this year.
So that'll be information we have for the 2012 budget then?
Yes.
Thank you.
Alderman Rainey?
Yes. I have a request, and I know I could do it myself by copying and pasting, but the information that we got, and I did see it online, for the year-to-date summaries, if we could have a last column on there of the 2011 proposed budget number, that really helps me make a comparison between what we've done in the last 2 years and what we're proposing. Just that one column is just always really helpful for me.
And for the rest of the council, Alderman Rainey is referring to the report that was in the Friday packet on building permit revenue, and she's asking for another column.
No, not just building permit revenue.
All fee revenue.
Right.
So we'll add a
So
proposed.
just copy it from one place and put it into this
Understood,
column.
and we'll put a column in Mr. Lyons' great.
That'd be really helpful.
We'll
And I realize it's 10 months versus, but, you know, it's interesting to have
Certainly.
9 months or 8 months comparing to 10 months. And by the way, that is not my phone. My phone is right here, and it is on silent. But there is City Manager, there is something ringing over here.
And see, it's after hours when you have that problem.
If you think so, Alderman Rainey.
Any of the rest of you heard?
All right, I see no more lights. And we do have an executive session. Well, it could be a short executive session.
Talk about one more thing.
Yes.
You know, I know it's called the pilot agreements, but we never called it that when they were being made. We just said contributions in lieu of taxes. One of the ones that I know about is the Annexter Center agreement, a $10,000 annual agreement when they took a property off the tax rolls and built the beautiful 824 Dobson building, which we're all very grateful for, but they did make a promise. They made a promise to us that they would pay $10,000 a year, and it appears that they haven't done that. I think I heard from someplace that they made it 1 year and never again. So I'd like to have more information about per memo, you know, there's the 4,000, 2,300, and a 10,000, and a 60,000, but they're not, it's not per the budget. It's just per an agreement we had that people are not living up to. So I'd like more information about what our staff has done to contact and collect that money. I mean, it's nothing we extracted out of anybody. They promised to pay it.
Alderman Grover?
I do have two more questions. The first is with regard to space in the Civic Center that's available for use by others, how much space do we have, and where is it in the Civic Center?
Mr. Gaynor is coming up. I believe we also did a memorandum
Did we?
on that. If maybe we can.
And we may need some of it because we're going to get a federally qualified health center, so some of the space
And
will
I think
go
we're
to that,
also.
at least initially.
And before Mr. Gaynor responds, and we've not talked about it in this budget process, is the Evanston Community Media Center.
Yes, yes.
They are going to run out of money here probably in the spring, and then not have any place to go. And so I would hope that the council would be mindful that we may have to be a landing spot for ECMC as well.
That's a very big savings.
We may have to be a landing spot for ECMC because they will not have the resources likely to rent additional space once their lease ends. The middle part of next year, April, May, June. So just Mr. Gaynor can answer this direct question, but we've not talked about ECMC as part of the budget. It was a big part of last year's discussion, but we need to be mindful they may need space. In the very initial stages, we have been, yes.
So the question is, what space do we have in the Civic Center, and how
We
much?
really can't give you that response because I think the mayor has talked with Senator Schoenberg about us investigating space for the state, and so we've talked with the senator.
That would be for, excuse me, Doug, that would be for the state jobs program that we are in danger of losing. And we desperately need to have some space for that program in the hope that it won't all go to Deerfield or Arlington Heights or wherever it was scheduled to go.
Put it in the North Branch Library.
In addition, as the city manager mentioned, ECMC is a possibility. There's been some discussions previously. I don't know if it's been decided, and if it is, then we can put it to rest as the township. Is that a possibility of moving here? So we really haven't made any real decisions on how much space we have until we decide if ECMC is coming here, if the state possibly is going to be here. So there's like at least 4, if not 5, potential tenants that could be moving in. And so, and as Ivana Thomas has the medical facility, folks coming in, that's a whole nother piece, and I'm not sure of how much space they're going to need for that activity. So we're sort of in a holding pattern at this point.
But I think Alderman Grover, maybe speaking even more specific general terms, we have the ground floor space is probably the largest area. There's mostly this wing right below us on the ground floor. The middle portion is a question mark regarding the federally qualified health center. About a half of that middle portion is available, and then the portion on the north end of the building is about 3/4 occupied. This floor with the meeting rooms is largely occupied. The first floor has the wing right below us. Here next to the Human Resource Division, there are 3 or 4 offices of varying sizes, including one pretty large office almost directly below us, I think, that's available. On the 3rd floor with the remodeling that we did, moving Community and Economic Development and Public Works around a little bit, also creating a space for Public Works Administration, which had really been lost in the absence of a director. The 3rd floor is largely full. The 4th floor, we have probably 3 offices of fairly good size available, a couple near the Paracel room, a large office across from the law department, available. So as we look at bringing in potential tenants, I think we have the largest spaces on the ground floor and the first floor, and some small spaces largely on the fourth floor that we could make available. So even if with ECMC, with the FQHC, even with the state, there probably would still be opportunities, do a little bit of consolidation, also then some of the offices that are available that could be freed up. So I think once we get a better idea of where some of these are going to fall over the next 6-9 months, I think there would be opportunities for us to perhaps even make some smaller spaces available for folks in order to be fully occupied in this building.
Right, thank you. And so the building is underutilized.
Yes.
Pretty clearly. My other question has to do with one of the proposed below-the-line reductions, namely the deferred 2% cost of living adjustment for the non-union personnel. When would they normally get that 2% adjustment? We're proposing below the line, deferring it to September 1st next year.
Scheduled to be given to the non-union employees on March 1st. So it would be a 6-month deferral.
So a 6-month deferral is $165,000.
And again, just to clarify that these are employees that are not under contract. When we say deferral to different times, that really is under past practice of the council. The council may choose to make any adjustment. Ultimately, we have budgeted for the purposes of the proposed budget, though, that those non-represented employees would receive the same adjustments. All across the board, or not including the management that's not represented?
No, the deferral is for all non-union employees. The unions have cost of living increases on March 1 and June 1, or March 1 and September 1, depending on the bargaining units. As you recall, we did a split to the cost of living increases for the upcoming year.
Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. City Manager, I just want to make sure we're going to save room in the Civic Center for the township offices.
Alderman Fisk, members of the council, I think ultimately that becomes a challenge with the amount of space that they would need, and I think it's the FQHC versus the township. Those would have the approximately the same kind of footprint. I think over time we're looking at the FQHC having its own facility outside of this building. Could we make alternate arrangements to accommodate everyone? Probably, but I think over time, I think we see the ground floor as being we don't want it to just be we want it to be a full part of the building, and I think for a long time the offices on the ground floor have not always been considered a full part of the building, and we want to make that change best we can.
Alderman Fisk, the FQHC has to use this as the address, that this being the only place that we could say we had found that was available for it, and the application is either in now or goes in this week. But that doesn't mean that a year from now or 2 years from now it would still be here.
That's timely. We have a lease that's running. So.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes, City Manager and staff, it seems as though you've been doing some additional thinking about proposed cuts, and I would like to have some rethinking done on the Noise Cultural Arts Center and the Ecology Center personnel cuts. I think there's been some really cogent arguments to keep those positions. They seem to be revenue generators to some extent, and I'd like to see if you have any new thinking on that at our next meeting.
Sure. And Alderman Rainey, members of the council, I'm happy to share some additional thinking on other items right now if you'd like. Certainly or if you'd rather wait till Wednesday, I'm happy to do that as well.
No, let's do it now. Let's do it now.
Coming into this evening's meeting, the staff and I kind of looked at our notes from issues that had been discussed by the council, and we came up with a list of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 items above the line that we thought that the council was interested to talk about. in more detail. We have covered the Dutch elm injection program. We have covered this evening the Parks Forestry Worker. There's one Parks Forestry Worker, two Parks Forestry Worker 3 positions, and we've talked about 311. Other issues that I've heard the council talk about, which I think would be a subject of some ultimate decision-making, is the inclusion specialist, the results with the library branches, the recreation maintenance position, and the zoning administrator. Those are of the other issues, other positions raised. Those seem to be a list of the major ones that have come up. The noise center position that's also been raised by Alderman Rainey and others is one of those positions that is below the line, so is not being recommended for reduction, but instead being recommended as a possible solution. I would propose to the council, if the list of positions that I've just run through, these areas, seem to be, in the council's mind, the lion's share of issues, I'd like to come back on Wednesday evening with a solution that addresses all this, with the exception of the branch libraries. I think I've made my position clear on the branch libraries, that I believe that it makes sense to not move forward with them. I understand that the council has not completed its deliberations, so I would not presume to have a funding strategy right out of the box on Wednesday to do that. However, if the council chooses to move forward to keep the branches, we would be prepared to talk about what some options would be to provide funding. So if that makes sense to you, I would be happy to come back with some revisions that address the issues that I've just discussed in an attempt that perhaps they will meet with your approval, and that may help narrow your discussion down a little bit further. I imagine, in deference to Alderman Wilson, that the council's doesn't want to tackle all of the major issues tonight. I appreciate that you have taken the time dealing with 2 or 3 substantial issues that are certainly before us, but I would propose to come back and start the meeting off on Wednesday evening with some revisions. Would likely propose taking some items below the line and bringing them above the line. Have already mentioned that I would come back with a revised proposal on 311 that would free up some additional revenue, and then hopefully then with the council's discussion of those changes plus a discussion on branch libraries, you might be very close to a conclusion on Wednesday evening.
On that note, can I move adjournment?
Well, Alderman Nguyen is on. Yes, you could, Alderman Shaw. We need, actually, we need you to read.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting ready to do.
Thank you so much.
Do I have a second for adjournment?
Second.
Then, in that case, pursuant to 5 Illinois Compiled Statute ILCS 120/2A, I move that the City Council convene into special executive session to discuss agenda items regarding personnel, real estate, litigation, and minutes. Can I get a second?
Second.
Alderman Tandem. Alderman Grover. Alderman Rainey. Alderman Burris. Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman John Batiste.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen.
Commission people, can I get in there?
I know, they get in my stuff.
Alderman Nguyen.
Said
Alderman Holmes.
Yeah, because I put in all. I put everything.
The motion
My
passes.
field work.
What does the key?
Wait, let's see.
Opposed.
What does it look like? It's a